Welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast. Hello and welcome to the Cantina Chatter podcast. My name is Victoria and I will be your host on this galactic adventure through Star Wars, toys and collectibles, pop culture, and randomness from the 80s and 90s. Welcome back to another episode of Cantina Chatter podcast. Great to have everybody back once again. We're still kind of in weird times, and to help get us through that, a lot of us turn to the things that are hobbies for us, the things that give us passion, or just give us pleasure. And it's hard to talk about that sort of thing here on the podcast, obviously, without talking about toys. So, Tom, what do you think? What are we going to talk about today?
We're going to talk about retro and the resurgence of re-releases of old toys that we had as children, wrapped up in the packages that they were given to us when we were children, and just sold to us again now as adults.
Wow. So, Tom, have you ever been double dipped on?
Oh my, yeah, I would say so. It's man, it's they really know how to get us aging Gen Xers.
Yeah, well, I'm not a Gen Xer, but they're still getting me, so I don't know what to do. It's affecting everybody.
Yeah. Well, you're a millennial, right?
Yeah, millennial. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So no, this is yeah. Even triple dipping, I would say in some cases, they're like really, like latching onto us. They know what we want, or maybe we don't even know we want it. They know what we want, and they're figuring out ways to sell us this stuff that we bought 30, 20 years ago. And we're buying it again because we're suckers.
Yeah, it's definitely suckers. We've got the disposable income. We've got all the modern, awesome versions of these characters from these various lines that we love. And then they just package up the original one. And they're like, hey, remember this? It's like, yes, I do. Give it to me. It's I'm absolutely a sucker for this stuff.
Yeah, so for years now, these companies have been, on us with retro. And it's not just the toy companies. There's a lot of things going on just in terms of popular culture and, in the media, the way that movies and marketing are being handled that are very reminiscent. They're trying to capitalize on, I guess 1980s is the most obvious one. We've seen a lot of that like over the last 5 years. Stranger Things, the way Thor Ragnarok was marketed. Yeah. And music, just turn on the radio right now. You'll hear things like The Weeknd, Dua Lipa. A lot of those music, those artists, they're using sounds that harken back to the 1980s, late 70s. And it's still a big thing. And I guess, the people right now that are in that age bracket, as you were referring to earlier, are having, they are the ones that maybe tend to have the more disposable income, those in the 30s and 40s and whatnot. And, these companies know how to market to us. They know what we like. They know what we remember. And I think that's the bigger thing is not so much what we like. It's what we grew up with. It's what we remember from when we were kids and very impressionable. And they got their hooks in us right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're doing a bang up job with it too. If you're, as I said before, a sucker like me. Basically, like all of these lines, I'm grown immediately attached to, clamoring, salivating over them. I just got my real Ghostbusters today from Walmart, which that was an adventure a few months ago, and then the delay at the beginning of June, which of course the delay, but I mean, I was just like, oh, when do they come? And here they are, and they are pristine, and they are beautiful, and they are in their package.
Yeah, yeah, and we'll talk about Ghostbusters and all these different lines that have recently come about and have come about in the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years that I mean they started it very early on, and I think that's something that it's something we haven't really seen before. I think every now and then you have a little bit of a resurgence of earlier time periods. I kind of recall when I was like in middle school, like in the late 90s, they I remember like the 1970s kind of had a little bit of a resurgence.
Yeah,
I remember
there's
people
always
wearing
that.
bell bottoms. Yeah, that's what I mean. So I think every now and then you see a little bit of that, but it tends to usually be in fashion. The way that we're seeing it now, on the level we're seeing it now. So yeah, it's just huge in every form. Like I was saying, music, movies, TV shows. New Coke came back last summer for a little bit. So I bought one of those. That was one of the Stranger Things tie-ins, and I think it came out in
Oh, right.
'85. So I wouldn't have been able to have enjoyed it back then. So for
I
me,
was
I got
never
to
a big
taste that for the first time.
Yeah. I was never a big Coke fan, so I'm certain I had it when I was a kid, but I never liked Coke. I'm not a cola person.
Oh
Um,
man. So yeah, and then we're seeing it like things in Ecto Cooler back when Ghostbusters in 2016 was released.
right?
Ecto Cooler was brought back, and a lot of us, that was hard to get. Like people were
Yeah.
really into buying that. It was sold out for a while, and and then they stopped selling it. It's like some of these things they just bring back every now and then because either people are a little bit older and they want to double, triple, quadruple dip onto them,
hmm
or maybe it's somebody that hasn't, like I was talking about with the new Coke, like something that somebody knows about it, but they didn't
Yeah.
have the opportunity to really experience it. So for them, it's like, oh, now I get to experience this thing that happened before I was born. So yeah, it's crazy the way that these companies really own in on our nostalgia.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I remember when I was growing up, there was a lot of like love for the 60s and 70s and stuff like that. So the fact that we're still in the 80s, moving into the 90s, it feels like in nostalgic kind of things now. This sort of tracks with the timeline. But it's interesting because of the big all the big brands that we're now, for better or worse stuck with. Um all really came about in the 80s, right?
Yeah.
Um, like before that, you didn't have the toy lines that really dominated pop culture in the way that once Star Wars and He-Man and Ghostbusters and Turtles and Thunder, all these things came out in the 80s. Before that, it wasn't quite the same thing. So that's why I don't think back then we would get quite as big of a nostalgia dump on those sorts of things. Whereas music was, of course, a very big everyone wanted to listen to the music of the 70s back when I was in high school in the 90s. um and in fairness they still do because it's great stuff, but during the 80s that's when all the big pop culture things came about that now they just keep getting rinsed and repeated and recycled forever. And given that I grew up in the 80s, I like that sort of thing. That makes me awfully
Uh,
happy. I do question the value of that on modern culture and kids today. Like what's their toy line? Is it just Star Wars and He-Man again? Is that good? Is that bad? I don't know, but I know it tickles my
yeah.
fancy.
Yeah. Well, some of those lines have been available nonstop basically since those days. Star Wars came back in '95.
Right.
Ninja Turtles have gone on ever since, basically.
Yeah, they never stopped.
Yeah, they never stopped. So, I mean, some of these things have
Transformers.
just gone on. Yeah, Transformers. So some of these things have gone on for such a long time, and they're selecting specific things that are part of the genesis of those toy lines, and they're bringing
hmm
those back for
Yeah.
new audiences and for the older audiences that grew up with that stuff and want to experience that on some level once again because of the memories and you know I mean, I'm sure you have toys in your collection where you remember, oh, I remember when I got that. I was this years
Yeah.
old. I bought it at this store. My mom bought
hmm
this for me. My grandmother bought this for me. So, we all have that, a lot of us.
hmm Yeah, and that's what a lot of the appeal of these sorts of things is. It's sometimes it's just that very specific memory of being handed the figure in the package, unwrapping the Christmas present, and there's the thing in the package before you tore it out and played with it. It's that like brief moment. It's walking into the Toys R Us and seeing the rack of these things back when they would, the toy aisle would be dominated by one or two, figure lines, and they'd take the entire section. It's that feeling. That's the thing that I'm personally really attached to.
Yeah, so I think, one of the things when we think back to these things that are being marketed towards us again is that, we associate them obviously with, being a child. When we think of toys, what do we think about? Like, not so much maybe the toys we collect now as adults. So when you think about being a kid and playing with toys, what is the feeling that you have?
Fun. It's just the fun of it.
Exactly. When you think back, when I think back to like Ecto Cooler and that coming back on the market in 2016, what did I think about? Well, I thought about sitting in front of the television, at age 3 or 4 years old, drinking an Ecto Cooler and watching the real Ghostbusters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's all about the happiness, remembering the fun that you had playing with those toys or enjoying that product, the memories that you associate it. I think in a recent episode, I was talking about, the Kenner Jurassic Park Red T-Rex, or it was in a live stream or something. But I remember waking up on Christmas morning and my grandmother had bought that for me. So it's something I still have, and it's an amazing piece in and of itself. But it's something that I obviously wouldn't care for quite as much if I didn't have that memory to associate with it. So, it's the good memories. A lot of us have tough times in our childhoods. I certainly did. I was bullied a lot in elementary school and I had a really hard time. But outside of that, it wasn't so bad. I mean, I had my toys. I had the TV shows that I enjoyed. I had my routines of Saturday morning cartoons and, all this fun stuff that just isn't around anymore, and yeah, so you're right. It's the fun of it. It's the happiness, so why wouldn't we be interested in retro toys coming back or, retro music or, beverages? I mean, why wouldn't we? It's obvious that these companies are aware and it's obvious that, we have an affinity for it.
They're directly marketed towards us and it's working.
Yeah. And it's working. And a lot of bystanders too. I see a lot of, I mean, maybe not as many, but I have seen like, some younger people too being like, oh, what's this? Oh, Ecto Cooler? That sounds cool. Oh, what these Ninja Turtles? I never had these, but they're cool. Look at these parts trees that they come with for their weapons. Just like stuff like that. That's kind of weird, but it's alluring to even people that maybe didn't experience it.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, even the retro Star Wars lines. We'll talk about them in a bit, but yeah, I wasn't around to collect the vintage line like you were, so. Yeah, so for me, it's just, I've loved Star Wars and I've loved the Star Wars toy line since I was a kid, even though I missed out on those early ones. So by default, I feel like, those are intriguing to me. So.
Yeah, I find it interesting that you are as intrigued by those vintage style retro collection ones as I am, given that, yeah, you don't have those same memories associated with it. I think that's interesting. That said, I imagine. Mm-hmm. I imagine some of your first Star Wars figures were those original Power of the Force ones, right? Power of the Force 2?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's just like I said, I think it's, because I've loved Star Wars for so long and Star Wars toys, I think by extension, that's just kind of something that comes with the territory. It's like, oh, these are cool. This is the genesis of it all. I think you have to appreciate on some level the history of the whole thing that you love and kind of understand, where it began. And I think, by default, you're kind of going to gravitate towards that as well. And I that's my reasoning for it. I think that's why I enjoy those so much.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so let's talk toys, Tom. Let's get into specifics here. So, speaking of Star Wars, the Power of the Force 2. I don't know that this was the exact, first time that retro was dipped into, but when the Power of the Force 2 line came out, Kenner/Hasbro produced this set. So it was like a kind of a throwback set that had, and as I recall, they weren't the exact vintage figures for Star Wars. They were kind of like with the new figures, they were kind of like re-sculpts, or they were cast from the old figures because the sizes were a little bit different.
Yeah.
So was this in your memory, as far as, just off the top of our heads, is that kind of the first thing you remember as well?
Yeah, certainly out of the most of the modern toy lines, as you said, there was probably something else at some point. But I remember that 4 pack. I almost wonder if it was a Toys R Us exclusive too, and it had like Luke Skywalker, the Farm Boy Luke with the yellow lightsaber. It had Darth Vader. I don't remember who else it came with. Maybe Chewbacca and Han. Um, I couldn't tell you that, but yeah, I think that was
Yeah.
the first one that like felt very much like, oh, we're doing a recreation of the original toys. And I debated getting it because as a kid I didn't have Farm Boy Luke. I only had Jedi Knight Luke and Luke Stormtrooper. So
Yeah.
I contemplated buying that, though I didn't.
Yeah, so it was called the Classic Edition 4 pack, Power of the Force 1995. Toys R Us exclusive, like you said.
Oh well.
Retailed for $19.99 and included Han Solo, Chewbacca, Darth Vader, and Luke Skywalker.
Oh, okay, I got it right. 1999 for 4 whole figures. Not these days.
Yeah, not these days for sure. So yeah, so that I never saw that because I mean back then I didn't have Toys R Us in my hometown. We still don't, but the nearest one I think was like a half hour away, and we rarely ever went there. It was very rare that we went to Toys R Us, or went to another nearby town to go to Toys R Us.
Yep. That was us
So
too.
I mean, yeah. So my parents had business or something they needed to go do there, maybe. But other than that, we were never going to just go. I mean, that's when I was an adult, sure, all the time.
Yeah.
Of course, I would drive a half hour to just go to Toys R Us.
Yeah.
But yeah, haven't done that. As a kid, that wasn't something that we did. But
Oh yeah. When I was a kid, I moved to Vermont from Connecticut, and basically the only one that we had was in Connecticut, so 3.5 hours away. When I visit my grandparents, I'd get to go to the Toys R Us there. And eventually, they put one into Burlington, Vermont, which was still 2 hours away. So a very rare occurrence, but a very special, exciting occurrence.
it's funny. I was just talking to my husband the other day. Do you remember the band of animatronic characters, the Rockafire Explosion?
No, not at all.
Okay. So there was a chain of, or rather multiple chains of pizza restaurants. One of them was a place called Showbiz Pizza. And it was a place that, we didn't have. My husband had it near his hometown when he was a kid. And so basically, the Rockafire Explosion was this band of animatronic characters that were created by a creative entertainment company based in Orlando, Florida. And they were basically like a band of different animals. There was like the gorilla, the bear, mouse, just different animals that would all participate in this band, and they would sing like cover versions of popular songs. In our hometown, it was actually in one of the towns nearby that had Toys R Us. So I know this doesn't really relate to toys in any way, but this band was at a place called Fun Time Pizza, and we only went one time. We had to beg our parents to go there, and it was like a half hour away. So, they took us, but, it was on a day where they also had other things to do. So just kind of drive that point, that, we didn't really go out of town to do things like this, very often. It had to be for special occasions like that bit, which, by the way, remind me to send you a video of these guys when we're done, because
Yeah.
you'll get a kick out of this.
I've certainly seen like animatronic animal bands and stuff like that. So I wonder if it is all just kind of the same thing. Those are very neat. I dig those kind of things.
Yeah, I just saw the commercial for this place on YouTube. Somebody had found the commercial, and I was like, yep, that's totally it. That's totally the music I remember. That's totally what drove, me and my siblings to beg our parents to take us to Fun Time Pizza. And spoiler alert, once we got there, I wasn't as impressed with it as I was in the commercials.
Yeah, well, that's fair.
Anyway,
The
yeah,
memory,
so
it's a good memory though. So in the end,
good,
it's worth it.
Yeah, it's a good memory. It's a good story. It's a fun thing to go back and look up on the internet and reminisce about. So, and for some reason, I tend to remember like a lot more than my siblings do, except for some reason. So, at least long-term memory. Short-term memory, that's another story. But yeah. So okay. So after that, You want to talk a little bit about what came after this classic edition 4-pack and maybe a different toy line?
Yeah, so in the early 2000s, they created a new Masters of the Universe TV series for Cartoon Network, which is now called the 2000X series. Because it was, like 2002, 2003, something like that. Mike Young Productions. It was very, very good. It only lasted 2 seasons. But if you've not checked it out, I highly recommend it. It's really neat. But they released a whole set. It was like 10, at least 10 figures. It might have even been more, of what they called the Masters of the Universe commemorative series, where it was straight up reproductions of the original action figures in their original packaging. They had, He-Man, Skeletor, Beastman, Triclops, Tila, Man-at-Arms, I think like even Stratos and Buzz-Off, Trapjaw, like a lot of the characters. They even got up to having like variants of He-Man and Skeletor with their battle armor. And even these commemorative ones now these days can go for a decent amount of change. I didn't buy those at the time because I was an adult. Oops. But that was really neat. But that was a similar sort of thing where they were trying to tap back into, the 80s, a little bit of the 80s nostalgia. And I thought that was really neat. I've got a friend in Vermont who's got the whole set. Yeah, I think it's a really cool thing to do. So that was the second time. That was the first time I think I saw it where they recreated the original figures and straight up also recreated the card art, like the exact same thing. I'm certain there's little differences, so you can tell, and they also would come in like almost like a clamshell around the package as well, if you wanted to keep it in that. But I think that was the first time that they did something that was that much of a direct copy off the original one. At least that I'm aware of.
Nice. So what year did you say this was?
This was probably 2002 or 2003.
Okay. And like you said earlier too, that like Masters of the Universe is it's come and go, hasn't it? Like even during that time frame earlier on.
Yeah, it's one of those properties that's always very niche. It didn't quite stick around in the way that a Star Wars or Transformers have. So they came out with a new cartoon series and a new toy line as well, which were pretty neat figures. But it didn't really catch on, so it didn't stick around. Masters of the Universe is now having a weird sort of resurgence, which I think is interesting. And I don't really know what the genesis point of that is. They've had a great toy line for over 10 years now called Masters of the Universe Classics. Super 7 took that over and then started making the original toy line scale and articulation figures based on the Filmation cartoons. And now Mattel is coming out with Masters of the Universe Origins, which have modern articulation, but the figure designs are based on the original toys again, and they come on those same, lava burst explosion card backs that the originals did. And it's, they've got, I think, like 10 figures coming out this fall. Nice. Most of them look exactly like the originals. He-Man and Skeletor, they kind of changed the heads of a little bit, which I'm bummed about. But I'm probably going to get them anyway. But
of course you are.
Yeah, and it's another thing, as you said, double dipping. Like, boy, do I want to open them? Do I want to have a carded set? I don't really know why I want to open them. I've got the 6-inch scale classics line, which is really exceptional. But man, there's something about these retro ones that it's really calling to me. So
yeah.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna be a sucker for it though.
Yeah, I think you are. And it's kind of it's something that these different companies, I think they've kind of slowly figured it out. It seems like until recently, it's just kind of like boom. But the one that I remember a lot is kind of the first one that I really went for, in terms of like recreations or reproductions was Playmates back in 2009. They produced their Power Rangers, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 25th anniversary line, and basically these were the exact same figures that they had sold us, back in the late 80s. of their core turtles. You know, the
Yeah.
Turtles, Splinter, Shredder, Bebop, Rocksteady, Foot Soldier.
Oh well,
So
they did have Bebop, Rocksteady, and the Foot Soldier. I wasn't quite certain about that with because the modern. We'll get into the modern one in a second, but that's cool. So you got those?
I do have those. I never opened them because I never just really found a place to put them. So I still have those.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, some of the cards have kind of started, like the bubbles have started lifting from the cards. So I
Huh.
guess that's just age, or I don't
Yeah.
know. But from what I understand, that's happened on some of them. But yeah, so I really remember that though. I was like, oh, this is awesome. I was like, this was a time in my life where, we're talking about what, like 11 years ago, where,
Mm-hmm.
I was, obviously, they were able to capitalize on the fact that I had already bought these, when I was really little,
Yeah.
and, recognize them and was like, oh, well, I mean, I gotta have them. What's cooler than buying the same toy as an adult that I already bought when I was like super little? I mean, it's weird. The
It's really
psychology.
weird. Yeah, yeah. There should be a study done on people like us. What's cooler than buying the exact same thing you bought as a kid, but now as an adult? I can think of a few things, but I don't think they're going to give me as much happiness as those darn turtles. I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's like
Um,
you generally speaking, you might not buy the same exact anything that you bought 30 years ago. Would you buy the same like KitchenAid like mixer? Probably not.
no, there's way
Would
too
you
many improvements.
there's way too would you buy the same like phone that you bought 30 years ago?
Nope.
No, probably don't have a landline maybe.
Nope, don't have a
Uh
landline.
would you buy the same car?
No, no, I
I
don't
wouldn't
think
either.
so.
Well, I mean, I wasn't driving that long ago, but
Yeah, but it's just these little nuggets of stuff. Um, but the other thing is like these things. There's a massive collector's market for all of these things. The original ones on the card backs that go
yeah.
for really really pricey amounts, and the companies can just sell the same thing to us at a normal retail value,
Yeah.
and those of us who don't need the original for its a real legitimacy. I don't, you know what I mean? Like the real legitimacy of I've got an original Darth Vader on an Empire Strikes back card from 1980, um,
The Empire
which I
Strikes
do.
Cat.
Did I say Empire Strikes Cat?
Yeah, I love it.
um, um, yeah, I can get this basically a repro instead, and it's an official repro rather than just someone glued.
Yeah.
There's some really nice repros out there, but
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if you've ever analyzed like the secondary market values of a lot of these retro toys, like, most recently, we'll talk about these in a minute, but like you alluded to earlier, Ghostbusters.
Yep.
Those are back. And before it was announced in February that the retro Ghostbusters were returning, Stay Puft Marshmallow Man original figure on card was going for like $300 to $400 on eBay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Once people figured out, oh, that, I can get something that's maybe not the exact, obviously, vintage figure, but basically, for all intents and purposes, is the vintage figure. I don't have to spend that much money. And, values on that figure have dropped by like close to like half to a third of the
Are you
value.
kidding?
Or,
Wow.
well, about half to 2/3 of the value of the listings that were, on eBay earlier this year. So, yeah, that seems to be kind of a trend too. I think they know that, companies know that they can reissue. Let's talk about Star Wars. They can reissue figures from 10 years ago,
Yeah.
from the earlier vintage collection or the legacy collection, and they bring down market values for those original releases. Well, they're figuring out they can do the same thing with the vintage figures because there's a market for them out there, and they're obviously capitalizing on that and capitalizing at the same time on our heartstrings.
Yeah. I'm looking up right now because a couple of years ago when I started getting into these, buying some of these things on card to create my own little like old school toy aisle, I looked up like Peter Venkman, and it looks like he still goes for about $450 on card, which is interesting. But he's sort of almost like the Boba Fett, right? Like everyone loves Peter Venkman. So I can see why he might have maintained his value. Like I was never I was never going to spend $500 on one of these things.
Yeah.
But also now I don't have to.
Yeah.
So yeah,
No,
I
true.
imagine some of the value of they won't they will lose the original vintage ones on the card lose some of the customers to the new stuff, but at the same time, probably the customers that they're losing were less likely to make the purchase anyway, right? Like I've
Yeah.
got my original Empire Strikes Back mint on card Darth Vader figure. I'm happy I've got that. I would probably, even if I've got the new retro collection one, I would probably seek out a Darth Vader, um,
Uh-huh.
because that is super important to me. I've got a handful of original Masters of the Universe figures on card, and I'm happy I've got those ones, because those were the two really big toy lines for me as a kid.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
I'm also loving all the retro style stuff, because then I can get more of them for cheap, and it'll look like a more filled out toy aisle. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I think, some people really, gravitate towards that. I mean, I don't really do it so much, as far as like, I mean, I've always wanted like that huge collection room. And I know we've talked about
Yeah,
this
yeah.
before, who doesn't? But as I've grown older, like it doesn't really look to me like it did when I thought about it maybe 20 years ago. It's a little more refined. It's a little less like cluttered.
Hmm.
And it's more it focuses a little bit more on certain things. So, but yeah, no, some people that we do know, you and I, still really go for that, and for them having that, I mean, obviously, that's something that they experienced as kids, and they want to recreate that in their homes. So I think that's
Hmm.
pretty awesome for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the Playmates Turtles. That's I'm glad you got those. I've The San Diego Comic Con exclusive this year is the set of the four turtles, Splinter and Shredder, once again released on those original card backs. So I managed to score those through Big Bad Toy Store. Um,
Nice.
and I'm very excited to add that to my weird little fake 80s
Yeah.
carded figure collection.
Yeah,
Um,
and that's actually the third time that those figures have been brought back, because I mentioned in 2009 the 25th anniversary, but maybe like 5 years ago or so, when we still had Toys R Us, womp
mhm.
womp,
uh,
they carried the classic collection, which was the same thing. They brought back those figures, and they
wow.
brought back other figures that we didn't get in 2009. So it was the same ones, but also like Slash and
Oh, you're kidding.
well, and we no, I'm not kidding. We got Krang and his little machine that walks around.
Yeah, I hate that thing.
um, yeah, we
He
got
had he had that in like two episodes of the cartoon series, and that's always the first Krang that comes out. NECA gave us that stupid Krang too. Give me Krang in his android body. He's in the
I
android
hear
body
you.
in every episode of the show. Come on.
I hear
Sorry.
you. I agree with that. Even as a kid, I remember having that toy, and I was like, wait, what? Because, I didn't, obviously, when you're a kid, you don't necessarily watch these, like, you don't catch every episode, like we
Yeah.
do as adults, and you don't, things aren't always like run in order and stuff. So,
Mhm.
but yeah, so, those 2009 figures weren't 100%. And neither are the new ones coming out these days, I don't think, for any of these lines. Maybe Ghostbusters comes closest, but like in 2009 they actually came with DVDs that had like one or two episodes
Oh
of
wow,
the
that's
show.
fun.
Yeah, yeah, and
Wow.
then
I'd love to know all the list of the ones they came out with in 2009. Slash is the best choice, because Slash is literally the Boba Fett of Ninja Turtles. Everybody
yeah,
loves Slash. I
yeah, there
love
was Slash.
Slash.
I think Slash came out. I think he came out in 2009. I'm not certain. But it was kind of a hard thing to tell, because on the card backs they did show him, and they showed other characters too.
Hmm.
You know what, Tom? Let me go grab one real quick, because I just want
Yeah.
to see what's on the
Oh
back.
yes,
I have
please.
one right over here. Okay. Okay.
All right.
So, all right. So I have here one of the 25th anniversary figures, and they didn't all come with DVDs, because I have Rocksteady here, and he doesn't have a DVD. But on the card back, and I know they didn't all come out, but this is what it shows. So it shows Michelangelo, Donatello, Splinter, Leonardo, Raphael, Casey Jones, April O'Neil. I know from those that Casey Jones did not come out. I know for a fact he did not come out.
Hmm.
The other ones did. It also shows Bebop slash Shredder with Krang, which was kind of something different for 2009 because that had never been a combination in the Playmates original days.
Huh.
Foot Soldier and Rocksteady. So Slash, I know I have him, but the one that I have was actually from the classic collection that came out like 5 years ago at Toys R Us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I don't know that he came out in 2009. So definitely him possibly, and for sure Casey Jones were not released in 2009. But
Right.
Slash did come back for classic collection about 5 years ago. And Casey Jones, I don't know if he came out in classic collection or not. I don't remember seeing him, but it wasn't just those. It was actually like a bunch of several others, like even variations on the Turtles came back out for classic collection. Like I think one had a skateboard and some of them had their sports equipment.
Yeah, yeah.
So
That's a good one to have.
that's a good one to have. And I'm glad I didn't open it.
Yeah. No, you can get a loose Slash for, $15.
So in 2009, they also brought back the Turtle Party Wagon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
They did, and I think it was like $25, $30, something like that, maybe a little more. But
I think I remember seeing that in the store. Yeah, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, so
I
if you
think
want
I
to get
remember
that now, it's about $250.
Sounds about right.
Yep, sounds about right. So
The
I wouldn't be
Party Wagon
shocked
was
if
a great toy. What a
it
good
was.
toy.
It was fantastic. I wouldn't be shocked if Playmates brought that back or brought some of these figures back again at some point.
I mean, they should, right? It's just printing money.
Yeah.
Did you know, I didn't know this until somewhat recently, they came out with an alternate version of the Party Wagon later on that was the Channel 6 news van.
Oh,
It's
wow.
blue. It's just a blue version of it, basically. I don't know if there's other differences, but it was the straight up Channel 6 news van. I watched a Pixel Dan video about it, and I was like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Like, there's so much Ninja Turtle stuff that I am still, surprised by the existence of some of these characters.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So I guess also Hasbro brought back for a little bit on vintage card backs, and these even preceded Star Wars The Vintage Collection, G.I. Joe on 25th anniversary card backs. They were brand new figures, super articulated, and I do remember seeing these, but I was never really into G.I. Joe. But yeah, so these were offered. Obviously, they're not the vintage figures; they're not like reproductions. They're new figures, but why else would they create that retro card back again if not to to make money off of people who had the originals?
Yeah, I'm hoping they'll re-release, they'll just do the Star Wars retro collection thing except for GI Joes. I'd be pretty excited to get some of those. Although I imagine the technology to put those together is a little bit more difficult these days.
Yeah.
But I'd love me a Cobra Commander.
Yep. Yeah. That's neat. So for the third time, Playmates is bringing back these Ninja Turtles. You said you got in on it for Comic-Con, and they actually come in a new box, right? It's like a Turtle Party Wagon style box.
Yeah, it's super cute. I'll unfold the box and put it flat into a nice secure location. I'm
Nice.
excited to have the carded versions of those figures. Those are ones that I recall buying in the store myself when I was a kid, and I don't even think I'd seen the show yet, but a friend of mine had told me about them. Ninja Turtles were great, just weird, such weird things. Endless
Yeah.
amount of imagination going into that toy line.
Yeah, and Ninja Turtles has really had like a renaissance in recent years, in terms of bringing back those classic characters. They did, I think it was around that time also, 2000, it might have been like 2012, I believe, where they brought back they made the original TV characters into 6-inch figures.
Oh, yeah.
And, or actually they were 7-inch technically, but
That was Ninja Turtles
Yeah.
Classics, right?
yeah, exactly. The classics. They were 7-inch, and at the time we were like, "Oh, these are amazing." But
Yeah.
then, shortly thereafter, SH Figuarts came out with their own versions, which blew them away.
Right.
And then NECA has been, really into these, like in the last several years. So, not just the Toon Turtles, but also the movie Turtles. So,
I've got both sets of them.
yeah,
I'm,
me too. They're amazing.
They're really, really cool. The movie ones in particular are just, my God, they really just look like the costumes shrunk down. I'm super excited for the Super Shredder when that comes out too.
Yeah, did you see the link to it? Somebody, I think Toy Shiz posted the link to it
Hmm.
yesterday.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I've got it saved, and I've got a alert me when it's available thing. Who knows if that'll work out for me. But
Yeah, that never works for me.
yeah, I'm really excited. I loved Super Shredder as a kid. The original action figure on that was so weird because he was like squat and really small.
Yeah.
But he was just so cool looking. And you've seen that Super 7 is making their own line of Ninja Turtle figures, which are based off of the original toys. So not the movies, not the tunes, but the toy line ones.
Yeah.
Those and they've picked some crazy characters to start with. They've already got Mutagen Man in the mix. Baxter Stockman looks amazing. Yeah, they're only like releasing one turtle per wave. So
Wow.
it's not just like, oh, it's the four turtles again. It's like, nah, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
all sorts of
Yeah.
stuff.
No, it's cool stuff. I just I went to Target. When did I go? I went to Target on Monday. Or no, I went to Target last week, and they had. I was surprised to find Bebop and Rocksteady for the first time in person.
Oh,
Yeah, so no, Ninja Turtles has been huge. So I think it was about 3 years ago. Bandai, as they still held on to the license for Power Rangers, they actually started re-releasing. They called it the Legacy collection, and they had, who doesn't call it that, right? And they had the same figures. I don't know. I know you didn't really collect Ninja Turtle, or I know you didn't really collect Power Rangers, but do you remember that they used to have those really bulky Power Ranger figures that had like the human head, and then it would flip up to reveal the masked head?
I think I've probably seen pictures of it or like an advertisement or something. Power Rangers, right when they hit, was right when I got away from, you know, kids shows and kids toys and stuff like that. It hit at that exact moment. So my knowledge of Power Rangers is really limited.
Right on. I mean,
My
yeah,
wife, my wife loves them.
nice. Yeah, I watched maybe the first couple seasons, but after that it got really weird, right? It was like Power Rangers in space and Power Rangers, I don't know, all kinds of weird stuff that came after that. So I kind of like grew out of it, but I still had some of the toys back then, and that was one figure that I had. I had one of the figures, and it had the pop up human and pop up masked head. So
Oh, cool.
so anyway, Bandai brought this back, I think, for their 25th anniversary of Power Rangers toys, and they didn't get to around to releasing all the Rangers. I think we got maybe let's see, we only got a handful of them. They didn't get around to doing all of them. I don't think they ever did the Yellow Ranger. I think or the Black. Oh no, they did the Black Ranger. I think maybe it was just the Yellow Ranger we didn't get, but they actually, the way they packaged these was pretty awesome. So it was the carded figure inside of a larger like window box.
Okay.
So you didn't have to worry about the cards coming in damaged. Maybe the outer box might have had a little bit of imperfection, but generally when I saw these in stores, even that outer box looked really good. So that was a really nice way to do it. They did mark them up a little bit, but I don't know. I think a lot of collectors would be okay with that if some of these other Hasbro maybe wanted to offer like window boxes on Retro Collection or something so that
Oh,
they
totally.
could protect the figures. I mean, I'd pay a few dollars more for that.
Yeah,
But
sure.
it beats having to buy the figure over and over and over online and hoping that one comes in okay.
Yup. I'm hoping my Hoth Han that arrives tomorrow is in better shape than the first one.
Yeah, hopefully. And Hasbro did this in 2004 when they brought back the vintage original trilogy collections. This was the very first time
Right.
that they brought back to the mainstream the Kenner packaging in the modern toy line, and they had clamshells to protect them, and you never had a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. I've got some of those ones, and I took the clamshells off of them so that I can have them in there. The normal card back sort of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's a smart way of doing it. But yeah, anything that adds cost these days is trickier to do. But yeah, window box would be fine. I imagine that would work great.
Yeah, and obviously you have the option of opening that window box and pulling out the carded figure and just
Right.
displaying that. So
Yeah.
that was a neat thing. They also got around to like remaking a lot of the original stuff, like the accessories and the weapons and some of the Zords, like updating them to modern standards basically. So that was pretty cool. Their Legacy collection.
I do want to just give a shout out to Transformers, which I've never been a big Transformers fan. Very casual at most on that. I've got my free Toy Fair swag bag Megatron here. Although, in fairness, I was going to buy Megatron anyway, so I lucked out there. But they've been doing retro collection stuff that I think is also a Walmart exclusive. It's the original guys again, and basically their original packages. And that's another one I've looked at, and I've been tempted. So Transformers has done as well.
Yeah, no, I was never really huge on Transformers. In fact, I think right now I only have one Transformers product in my collection,
What's that?
and that is the Ecto one that recently came out.
Oh, cool.
That transforms into I don't know, what does it transform into? A robot?
A robot, yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't tell you, a robot of some sort.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, Star Wars has been at this for a long time. We mentioned that 1995 set, and then they also brought back the the vintage original trilogy collection in 2004. That came out for that fall, and then it was put on ice for a couple years. They brought it back as vintage the Saga collection,
Right.
released more figures, and then more came out like fall 2007. It wasn't until 2010 that the vintage collection came out, and obviously this has been like the one Star Wars toy line that has most resonated with longtime Star Wars toy collectors.
Yeah.
Not only do you have that classic, timeless, retro packaging, but you also have, an updated figure that is more in line with modern standards. At least, in 2010, that was absolutely true. Every year that these toys come out, that's true, even though, we look at this line in 2020 and maybe some of those earlier figures, weren't up to par or aren't up to par at this point in time. But that's the thing with vintage, is that it's always evolving with whatever the more modern thing is, like photoreal, updated joints, things like that, sculpts.
Well, and even then, the photoreal stuff on the 3 3/4 figures is sort of hit or miss.
Yeah.
I've seen some that are really great, and like I just got the General Lando, and man, like the photoreal on that is spectacular. But I think I've seen like a Luke Skywalker that was little. I'll stick with the old artistic license version, I think. Not so with the Black Series, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hasbro's it's been a smart decision to do, is keep those things around. And then they ditched it after a few years, when they decided to do the big Phantom Menace re-release, and they cut all the articulation out of the figures, knocked them back to 5.5 POA. Released a bunch of Phantom Menace stuff that never sold.
Right.
And that was the beginning of the end.
It was.
The golden age of Star Wars collecting had come to a conclusion.
So it is worth mentioning that alongside the vintage collection in 2010, they were still producing like another line of, like modern Star Wars toys. It was like Shadows of the Dark Side, like in 2010, to 2012 or something. Mm-hmm. And then, when Phantom Menace came out, they did do the packaging. It was like movie heroes.
Yeah.
And, some of them were really good, really articulated. And, some of them were just like repacks, right? But there were figures that were, not quite up to vintage collection standards at the time. Mm-hmm. And, it was just like a huge thing. And when Phantom Menace came out in 3D in 2012, I think, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they
wanted it to be a huge thing.
They wanted it to be a huge thing. Yeah. They wanted to recreate 1999 for who knows why. But they brought back vintage collection, had some great figures. It's just that they slammed the market with them. Same thing with that other movie heroes assortment. They just bombarded the stores with them, and it took forever for them to clear out of them. And that's ultimately what ended the golden age of modern Star Wars toys.
Yeah, that was a nail in a coffin right there. While I stay excited about some of those Phantom Menace products that they came out with, in particular, like the giant brown slug MTT, which man, did I poo-poo when they announced that? But owning it, what a cool vehicle. The overwhelming public was not quite as see it again for the first time for the Phantom Menace. I saw
Yeah.
that in the cinema in Times Square with 6 other people opening weekend. Um,
Yeah.
It was a great 3D experience, though.
Yeah, no, totally. It was, and it's just a bummer that the rest of them didn't get released properly.
Is it a bummer? I don't know.
For me, it was because 3D. Go back in time a little bit. I think like late 2000s, like 2009. That's kind of when 3D started coming back, right? And it was kind
Yeah.
of a big thing for like 5 or 7 years. Like,
Yeah.
every movie that came out, like, well, not like romantic comedies and stuff, but like any other movie that came out was like available in regular or in 3D, and they did that
Yeah.
for a long time. And even now, some films are still coming out in 3D.
Oh, yeah.
But it was huge for a little while. Like people wanted to see movies in 3D,
I
and
don't I don't know if people wanted to see movies in 3D or if studios wanted to charge you the extra money for the 3D. I question whether the public demand for it was there.
well, if they were going to see them in 3D, then I would say they wanted it too.
Sometimes theaters would only offer 3D, or they would only offer the 2D screening of the movie in like 2 times and like 8 times in the 3D. I know that was
Huh.
the case around here for quite a while until like our local cinema figured out people didn't want to see the 3D stuff, and then they just switched it, and then they just basically don't even do 3D anymore. But maybe
Interesting.
that's just my neighborhood. I'll say
Oh,
this:
that's
while I don't think I was ever really craving watching the original Star Wars trilogy in 3D, I would have loved to see Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith in 3D. Those, like,
yeah.
I really did like watching The Phantom Menace in 3D. I like watching The Phantom Menace anyway, warts and all. But in 3D, it really felt like they did a good job with it, and I think the 2 prequels could have really, really benefited from it. I saw The Force
Yeah.
Awakens for the first time in 3D. Thankfully, that was, I think, the last time I saw something in 3D.
Yeah. Did The Rise of Skywalker come out in 3D?
I have no idea.
I don't
At that point, our cinema didn't offer in 3D anymore.
Yeah, I don't even remember. And this was even that, like I told you, short term memory.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, I did see Force Awakens in 3D. I saw Rise of Skywalker, Rogue One. I think I saw
Rogue,
Solo in 3D also.
Rogue One, we saw in 2D at our place right down the street, because at that point, after The Force Awakens, they kind of like, they switched. That was the one where at first you had to see it in 3D, and by the end of its run, it was mostly just 2D, and the 3D kind of got shoved aside. So we saw Rogue One for the first time there in 2D. The following day, we went to Union Square in Manhattan, and we watched the 4D experience of Rogue One because we liked the movie that much, which is, have you ever heard of this thing?
No.
You sit in like a fancy chair. It's a big 3D experience thing, and the chair will like blow air past your ear when like laser bolts are coming, or when people are getting like, shot. It'll like kick you in the back very slightly in the chair.
Yeah.
The chair will shake around, mist will come down on you. There's extra lights that flash around, and really, really neat. Yeah.
I've done something similar. It wasn't quite that, but there was a theater here, and I think it's still there, but I think it's still there. This was a while back. It was when The Dark Knight Rises came out in 2012, but they had an experience called D-Box. And it was something it was like, you had to pay a little bit more, but they had like several of them like right smack dab in the middle of the auditorium.
Yeah.
You would sit in them, and they were kind of like like they were a little higher off the ground. Like my legs weren't even touching not that they always touch the floor anyway, but they couldn't reach the floor in these things. And yeah, so it's kind of synced with the screen. So,
Yeah.
like you were saying, like if Batman like threw a punch or got punched in the back, the chair would feel it.
Yep.
And then
Same
it
sort
would
of
kind of
thing.
move around. Yeah, it'd like kind of move around with the bat pod or whatever. Like, just that. Yeah, but I don't remember the lights or the air effects. So that sounds like that's actually a little bit better.
It was really, really neat. It was really fun. Highly recommended if you see that experience available anywhere, and you go see one of these big, if you go see whatever the next thing Marvel puts out, or in 10 years when they finally make another Star Wars movie.
Yeah, totally. But not that I did it, but I don't know if D-Box is still around or not, but probably not the best idea to watch like a heavy action film while you're eating popcorn and drinking, a beverage or something while that's happening. So
Of course.
anyway. Yeah, so it was a huge thing. Star Wars brought back the vintage collection in 2018, and they gave collectors and longtime fans something that they've been asking for a long time. And I don't think this is the right time to talk about the results of those initial couple waves. We all know what that was, those of us who are collecting it. But yeah, so it's gone on basically from then to now, and there's not a whole lot to buy right this moment, but it's still there. But last year, Hasbro introduced the retro collection. So the retro collection, tell us a little bit about what the retro collection is.
There's straight up the original figures. Basically, they're like, I don't think they're really resculpted, or maybe they're like digitally scanned in and then tweaked slightly because they're not exactly the same, but. So to a general layman's eye, I would say they're the exact same figures as the original ones on the original card backs, and the card backs have like printed on little wear and tear to suggest that it's old, which honestly I really dig for that. I don't want it for any of my other retro things, no He-Mans, Ghostbusters, or Turtles with that, but for the Star Wars, for whatever reason, I really dig it. Yeah. And they're really fun. They're really neat. I've got my set. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I think you're unique in that line of thinking, because most people that I've spoken with that buy a retro collection aren't a fan of the fake weathering around the edges. And I mean, I feel the same way. I mean, I'm glad that you like it, because that's I mean, it's cool when people like things, right? But for me, I don't know. It's just like, it's obviously, the retro collection. It's not, you can't really pass it off as like an original vintage figure.
No.
I mean, you just look at the back, you look at the date stamp or whatever.
Yeah.
But I mean,
the bubbles are completely different.
Yeah, the bubbles are different. So I mean, I don't feel like they needed to weather them. So that I don't really, and especially on the Empire figures that came out this year, like they even went a little bit heavier on it, and I was like, no. So. But
fair enough.
I mean, it is what it is. But so the first wave that came out last year was a huge success. It was exclusive to Target. Target could not keep them in stock. I never once saw them. And some weeks I'm at Target when we're not during when it's not a pandemic anyway.
Yeah,
I'm at Target up to like 5 times a week, to try and find toys, and I never saw them. Thankfully, Entertainment Earth picked them up. Dorkside Toys, Big Bad Toy Store, all those fan channels picked them up. And through Entertainment Earth, I ordered a couple cases. I got a case to open up. I got a case to put on the wall in their figure shield clamshells. And, they're there right now and they look awesome. But this year they're at Walmart as they're exclusive. There have been no announcements. And according to Hasbro, when we've asked them, plans to bring them back as fan channel exclusives as well. So I think we've talked about... I hope they do too, but I think we've talked about before how this has gone so far.
Yeah. I've got lucky with mine. I only got one that looked like it had been folded in half 6 or 7 times before being stuffed into a soft envelope. The other ones came pretty okay. Little dings here and there, which as we've discussed, I don't mind the little dings too much. But yeah, I mean, I ordered a whole set of them, and each one came in a separate box and a separate package. Like, it's just strange. It's very weird. Of course, these things also came to us during the COVID-19 pandemic, so
yeah,
much more stressful period of time for all the poor folks who are packaging them up. It just struck me as a little odd. Walmart, pay your people more so that they put a little more care into these. Please pay them more.
Or if you're going to carry an exclusive, handle it properly. I mean, I think what they needed was, some guidance that came down from, the buyer level or the marketing or corporate level that kind of dictated, okay, this is our exclusive, the packaging is part of the product.
Right.
Let's for these products, make sure that, maybe when they scan the item before they ship it, something comes up on their handheld, machine or whatever, whatever they use, whatever tool they use, whenever they scan it, it shows, oh, this needs to be like in a special box or, something.
Yeah.
Just like at Target, they have anytime. This was a big problem for Funko Pop collectors. So I don't collect Funko Pops really, but I have a few. But
because they're
people
awful.
complained. well, yeah, but people complained about the way they were arriving. So now, anytime you order from Target, like something from Funko, it comes double boxed.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, so I know that costs them more, and they're not making any money off of it, but they're handling it right. If it's their exclusive product,
I'll
they're gonna, it's
I'll
not gonna come damaged.
I'll pay Walmart a few more bucks to ensure the same sort of thing.
I will too, or like we were saying, just put them in a clamshell. Clamshell is gonna cost them pennies on a dollar to produce.
Right.
Throw them in a clamshell, and we'll all be better off for it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. They are fun figures, though, and I can't wait to see what the next set they come out with is. I hope they don't wait until 2023 for the anniversary of Return of the Jedi. I hope we just get another set next year.
I think we'll get one next year.
Yeah.
Because last year it was Star Wars, and it wasn't like a special anniversary. So
True.
Yeah, and I know we talked about this previously, like what figures we'd want to see from Return of the Jedi. So
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I think we just talked about it over chat, right? We want Jedi Luke, Trenchcoat Han. That's going to be tricky though with the soft goods.
No, didn't they made him in the retro line, didn't they? Like you mean like the same figure from the old days, right?
Yeah, but with the soft goods these days, I don't know if they'd be able to put it out there at the same price point. Same thing with we want R2 and C3PO, right? We don't have those.
We mentioned those too. Yeah, we mentioned them.
But can you do the VAC metal anymore?
I don't know.
Doesn't look like it these days. It's kind of strange.
I don't know. Yeah. Well, let's suppose that they can. What other characters? So we're at what? We're at 5 right now?
That would be 4, right? Jedi Luke, Trenchcoat Han, 3PO, and R2D2.
Okay.
I want the Emperor.
We want the Emperor. There was another one that I think you mentioned too that I'd really love to see.
Is this a re-release?
Yeah.
Oh, what was it?
I'll give you a hint. Jabba's Palace.
Oh, Bib Fortuna.
Bib Fortuna.
Yeah, that would be amazing. I love Bib Fortuna. I love him so much.
I think I feel like we're missing Leia, so maybe Leia could be like the all new figure that they do for Return of the Jedi. Maybe we can get Slave Leia in a vintage figure form.
I would love that so much. I've always since I was a kid, I wanted that figure.
Of course.
Yeah, I mean, it's you got your Jabba's palace scene. You need to have Slave Leia in there, choking him out.
Sorry, Huttslayer Leia.
Huttslayer, sure, Huttslayer Leia. Yeah, that I would love that. That's when it comes to what the original figures were released and which ones, like in what order do I want additional ones, the first one out of all the figures would be Huttslayer Leia. The second one would be Grand Moff Tarkin, and we've got Tarkin now. I could come up with a bunch of other ones off the top of my head easily, but those two are so key.
Yeah. Have you ever thought about, and I know this is kind of going off on a little bit of a tangent, but have you ever thought about how The Empire Strikes Back isn't the most toyetic Star Wars movie, at all?
Yeah, it's really weird, right? It's like, the new figure they released for that, it's X-Wing pilot Luke, but he's got a banana visor on and he's got gloves. Now it's Snowspeeder Luke. I don't want that one.
It's...
Because as a kid, there would have been no reason for me to get that when I've already got the other Luke in a pilot outfit.
Yeah, it's... can you think about A New Hope? You got the Cantina, you got everything on Tatooine, right? The Tuskens, the Jawas, all the Rebel pilots, you got the Death Star, the Stormtroopers, all that. Return of the Jedi, you got Jabba's Palace, you got Endor, you got the Ewoks, you got lots of fun stuff. But then in The Empire Strikes Back, you basically just got...
We've got it all.
People.
Yeah.
You got it all. You got people. You got Yoda. You have Yoda, maybe the Ugnaughts, but that's about it as far as aliens go.
Yeah, but they came out with Ugnaughts, so we've got them.
Yeah.
And they had the 6 amazing bounty hunters, and they gave us the 6 amazing bounty hunters.
That's true. The bounty hunters, yeah.
Yeah, but we've got them. Yeah, there's not a thing from The Empire Strikes Back that I'm like, oh, I wish they would give me that in the retro collection style.
Or even in the vintage collection, we pretty much have... we need updates, obviously, of Lando, right? But we pretty much have everything else that we need from that movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't want to buy another Hoth Luke or Hoth Han. I have plenty of those.
Yeah, I'm done buying Lukes.
And as much as I love Hoth, I love the whole sequence and everything, I don't feel like those figures are the most interesting.
No, they're yeah, yeah, they're cool. It's I'm happy to have the ones that I've got, but it's basically I've got Hoth Soldier, Hoth General, and then the three main characters in Hoth outfits. That's all I need. I don't even have the Hoth
Yeah.
Rebel Soldier, and I don't have the Vintage Collection one, and I don't have the Black Series one. Neither of
Oh
them are on my
man.
radar. Yeah, I just
Oh
don't
man,
care.
you need those.
Nah,
You
nah.
need those. Yeah, so anyway, I just wanted to throw that in there because I know, I hear that a lot, like about some of the sequels that, they're not the most toyetic. And I agree with that. But then you look at like The Empire Strikes Back and it's not so much either. It's just that we have like, we've known it for so long that, we don't really think about it, I guess.
I would actually say that The Empire Strikes Back is super toyetic. It's just that they gave us all the things from it, right?
Huh.
Because you've got the Snowspeeder, that's new. You've got the AT-AT and the Scout Walker, those are new. You've got the six bounty hunters, those are new. Yoda, new. Bespin Cloud Car, Lando, new. Um, I mean, really, a good Cloud City playset would be a real big win there. I mean, so
Yeah,
that's a decent number of like cool new stuff.
sure. Okay,
Um,
well, let me reiterate then, Tom. The Empire Strikes Back is my favorite Star Wars film. I think it's the best Star Wars film,
mhm.
but I don't find anything in it to be as fun as Jabba's Palace or the
No,
Cantina.
no, absolutely
So,
not. No.
or any
J-
of the Tatooine stuff.
yeah, yeah. Jabba's Palace is my favorite stuff. The reason Return of the Jedi is my favorite Star Wars movie is because it has Jabba's Palace and the Battle of Endor and the Emperor. All my
The
favorite bits of
Emperor.
Star
Yeah.
Wars are in Return of the Jedi, even though it's sort of a messy movie. Yeah.
Uh huh. Yeah. Well, there you go. All right. So the big thing this year in terms of retro toy lines, obviously, was Kenner's Real Ghostbusters line coming back for the first time in probably the longest expansive time of any of these toy lines we've been talking about because those haven't really been on the market properly in so long. So this year at New York Toy Fair, Hasbro revealed that the Real Ghostbusters, the four original Ghostbuster figures, along with the Green Ghost, aka Slimer, and the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, would be making their debut in the retro collection for Ghostbusters as, wait for it, where are they exclusive?
Walmart.
That sounded just like, have you ever seen that Nestle commercial with the dog that says chocolate?
Nestles. Nestle makes the very best
Chocolate.
chocolate.
I love that.
Well, I'll tell you what, Walmart, you sent me all six of my Ghostbusters figures in really good condition, and that made me very happy.
That makes me happy to hear. Mine aren't due until Friday. I think I'm going to get them. So the whole thing's been weird. And let's just touch on it real quick. So
Yeah.
you know that these went up for pre-order, or they were supposed to go up for pre-order on a certain day in February, and that didn't happen. People kept checking. They were upset and like, what's going on? It took a day or two, right? But then they finally
Yep.
went up. They didn't ship. They started hitting in stores in April,
Mm-hmm.
and then they didn't start shipping until this month. But they first started shipping the Green Ghost and Stay Puffed,
Mm-hmm.
and then the actual Ghostbusters characters didn't ship themselves until a little bit later. But what happened with this? They actually threw up new links
Yeah.
for these figures as in stock, as well as the Stay Puffed and the Green Ghost for $5 more at $19.99 because they were $14.92 before, I think.
Yep.
And those ones shipped. I went ahead and bought those as soon as I found out. Thanks to Jurassic Dave 93 for letting me know about that. I was able to jump in on those, and then they shipped like within a day.
Those are the ones I've
So
got.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't have I have my original shipment of Green Ghost and Stay Puffed, but my original four Ghostbusters are still delayed. The new ones I got, yeah, they're from the new links, and I think I ordered them on Monday, and today's Wednesday.
crazy. So
Yeah,
again,
weird.
Walmart should not receive any more exclusives. They just don't know what they're doing. They don't know. It's a mess. It's really a mess.
It's peculiar.
And it's great that they ship to you in near perfect condition. And I hope that mine come in the same way. I haven't had the best luck with the Stay Puffed, so I'm still trying to get a better one. But yeah, no, it's interesting situation. But at the same time, who's going to deny that how awesome it is to see these Ghostbusters figures available again?
Yeah, I was crazy excited. I was crossing my fingers that would be a reveal at Toy Fair, but it was really like sort of a fool's hope. And then, sure enough, they revealed them. I think it got leaked the day before. So,
Yeah.
but my gosh, yeah. And the funny thing with the real Ghostbusters, I don't know if subsequent waves would really work out, because the subsequent waves of the Ghostbusters themselves, they started having all these weird action features and stuff, which I don't think stayed quite as popular as the
Uh-huh.
original ones. And the ghosts were not movie ghosts or not cartoon ghosts. They just became weird things, which were real
Yeah.
fun toys to play with as a kid. I loved them. But I don't have any nostalgic need to get, H2O or Granny Ghost on vintage cards. I think these ones I'm good with. I would love it
Yeah.
if they did the Tarkin thing, where they released some new real Ghostbusters toys on these original cards, but had the recurring villains of like Boogeyman and Sam Hain and the Sandman from the cartoon series. That would tickle my fancy.
That would be really interesting, and I would love that too. I mean, they do it with
Yeah.
Star Wars. Why not with Ghostbusters? Yeah, maybe it's a little more niche than Star Wars, but I mean, they're obviously selling through very well. The pre-order sold out. They
Mm-hmm.
sell out in stores. I don't see why something like that wouldn't be feasible.
Yeah, I think it would be super cool. Super cool.
Yeah,
I'd
but
love
these
it.
figures were the most. They were like the one thing out of New York Toy Fair that I was most excited
Yeah.
to be announced. And it's this it goes full circle. It goes back to what we were saying. I'm more excited about toys that I had 30 years ago than I am about new stuff.
Yeah, yeah. It's weird, right? Yeah.
It's
I've
weird.
my excitement for getting carded versions of the real Ghostbusters figures that I bought in, I don't know, 1985 or 86, whenever they came out, is the absolute thing I was most excited about. And I received the four Ghostbusters today, and I was just overjoyed.
I'll bet.
Yeah, my excitement for them is just through the roof. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know. Now we need the four Ghostbusters, real Ghostbusters style, in the 6-inch scale plasma series.
I agree. Just like Diamond selected last year, and which are super expensive on the secondary market now. But
Yeah, it's crazy.
yeah, I think that's a given. I kind of feel like that's something they're going to do. It's just a matter of when are they going to do it. I feel like it's something that they've got to do. I think they see the money on the table. Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'm sure it'll happen.
I hope so.
Sure
That would
it'll
be
happen.
great. That would
It
be
would
great.
be.
Yeah, I can't wait for you to get yours. Are you going to do a review on them?
There's yeah, I might tie it into like the whole Walmart the way it's been handled sort of thing. Just kind of do a different kind of video on it. But yeah, we'll
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, fingers crossed they show up in good condition for you. And I'm hoping that they'll come up with some clamshell cases that fit these guys soon. I think Zola
Oh
World
yeah.
is cooking up something, but it's not available yet.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah.
One of these companies definitely needs to get on that because even the Ninja Turtles that I have, like I don't have them in clamshells, and I'd love to have them in clamshells. So, hang them on the wall.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, this has been great, and retro is one of those things that I wonder how long it's going to go on. Are we always going to be interested in seeing these kinds of things every now and then, every 5 to 10 years? I imagine the companies will try and capitalize on that as long as people that lived during these those time frames of the original releases were kids. And maybe we'll even see it for newer toy lines, in 20 years that were released in the 2000s, 2010s. Yeah, I don't see any other way around it. Is wherever you can associate simpler times, for us in our case, before the internet, before we were adults and had to deal with taxes and showing up to work on time and all that.
COVID-19.
Don't even tell me. Yeah, as long as companies are able to capitalize on simpler, happier, joyful times, I think they're going to find a way to make money, and I think we're going to continue to see that.
Yep, I think so too. Or until we all die, like our generation.
Well, I think I said that as long as we're alive.
Oh yes,
I didn't
yes.
want to be. I think it's not as morbid to say as long as we're alive as it is to say when we die. A little more direct.
I do wonder, will the values of these things that we're theoretically passing on to our the next generation, will they have any value when we're 6 feet under in 40, 50 more years? Or will those generations be like, why did they collect these dumb plastic things?
Yeah, I think we're gonna maybe, as a global society, maybe move away from plastic as time
Yeah.
goes on, but not before those of us who are spending our money on little plastic men and women and aliens and creatures are out of the picture. So I think we'll see it for a little while yet.
Sounds good to me. I'm enjoying it.
I'm enjoying it too, so it sounds good to me as well. Any final thoughts?
Nope, I think that about covers it for old Tom here. I've got a whole bunch of retro style figures I'm just sitting here looking at in my room, and that makes me pretty happy.
Makes me happy too. Well, Tom, it's been a pleasure as always. A blast talking about retro stuff. Where can our listeners go to find you on social media?
Oh, I'm just Woozlin Demon on Twitter, and that's about it for me. Don't really
Cool.
update my Instagram ever.
Right on. So, yeah, if you're listening, go look up Tom and let us know what you think about all this stuff we're talking about, retro and all the toy lines that have come out in the last few decades. And most recently, Star Wars Retro, Ghostbusters. What are your thoughts? Are you buying them? Let us know. And Tom, once again, thanks for coming on to the show.
Thanks a lot, Victoria. It's always a pleasure.
And that's a wrap for this episode. Victoria's Cantina began on YouTube, and you can find plenty of toy content on the Victoria's Cantina YouTube channel. We are also on Instagram, constantly showcasing toy photography at Victoria's Cantina, as well as Facebook at Victoria's Cantina, and on Twitter, ranting and raving about toys and other nonsense at Vic's Cantina. For fun and random toy clips, follow us on TikTok at Victoria's Cantina. Got a question or something you'd like to share with us? Drop us a line in the fax machine. You can email victoriascantina@yahoo.com. If you are so inclined and wish to drop a coin in the tip jar, we are on Patreon, where you can gain greater access to the channel while helping to keep the content rolling. For VC branded merchandise such as t-shirts, ball caps, mugs, and other fun stuff, visit us on Teespring and TeePublic. Links to all of these magical places can be found in the show notes. Do you got a minute or two? If you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please leave us a 5-star rating and drop a brief review explaining why you enjoy the show. As always, I'm Victoria, and no matter where you're listening out in the galaxy, I'd like to thank you for tuning in to the Cantina Chatter Podcast.